I can't wait for that door being unlocked. I promise you. You're thinking about it, aren't you?
No, the door was not
The door
unlocked.
was unlocked.
Installing behind Soviet lines within Soviet
All right, everybody, welcome back. We've got another video for you. This one comes from Integrity Body Cam, and it is wife's stupid mistake ruins her husband's life in seconds.
War fighters.
Haven't seen it? Let's go.
Deputies in Florida had just stopped this vehicle for speeding, and within minutes, everything would spiral out of control.
Operation Gladio strategy,
Everything
and
spiraled
now
out of
to
control
fight
on the traffic
permanently
stuff?
against Russia.
No.
That Operation Gladio of the past has now been transformed into a highly profitable
She has it, but she doesn't.
war-making operation between Kiev and Lvov from the Polish border.
No, her keys
This
are
can
attached to that.
continue
Okay.
without
Yeah,
the rudiments of Ukraine, without the population,
You're on probation for
without the trade and export capability, without the ports, so long as the lights are on before and Kiev.
If you run it though on the back of the license
The
plate,
successors to Operation Gladio, the Zelensky regime, are making very considerable personal
White rock
fortunes,
spotted, so they found a
institutional
white rock. That's
fortunes,
plain view.
and
That's what we
they
call
will be
plain view,
funded
which
for as
means that
long
we can see it
as
from
there's
the outside of the
European money
vehicle.
and
It is
US
plain
political
view, and
will.
it gives us the right
That's,
to
in
go
my
in
view,
and
their
get it or
strategy.
search the
That's
vehicle.
let's call it the structure of the Ukraine as a permanent war-fighting platform, permanent war against Russia. That's not that's not to be defeated by a Russian counter boiling frog strategy. I don't believe so.
John, there is a report that the Ukrainian missile manufacturer Firepoint has secured an agreement with 13 European defense companies to develop, its new defense system, or its defense system, because they're trying to produce interceptors together with Europeans. And it says that the interceptor with this new cooperation going to be less than or under $1
You can go back though and see right from the
significantly
get-go.
cheaper than Patriot system.
I wish she
But
would just shut her
when
mouth for a
it comes,
second.
let's assume they're going to
I
reduce
don't even know what she's saying.
the
I'm
cost
just
of these interceptors. How is that going to be
obnoxious
effective
voice in
against
the background while I'm
Russian
trying to deal
missiles?
with this
How is
guy.
that going to help? You said 70 billion euros,
They're not messing with
70
this
billion euros from Europe to Ukraine. So how long does it take to deplete all of that money in Ukraine? I don't see that much. The money that putting out, that's going to bring huge sort of difference to the battlefield. How is that going to help them?
I'm sorry, I don't quite understand.
I'm talking about interceptors. Are they going to give it to Ukraine to produce interceptors? Are they going to give it to Ukraine to produce
whatever they're soft,
drones? What would be the strategy of Europeans in Europe? In my opinion, the United States with the Trump administration, we know what's going on. They're basically there to help, but they want to make money out of the war in Ukraine. They're not there to create charity like Europe, the way that Europe is supporting this war. So how is that going to help Ukraine in a long run? Let's assume 2 years from now. How is that going to help Ukrainians?
Well, again, I don't quite understand the question.
The question is money that Europe is putting out. Is
70
that
billion.
significant to support Ukraine to continue this war?
I promise you.
I
You're
would
thinking
say
about it, aren't you?
yes, because
I gotta take a break from
just
this
bear
and
in
talk
mind
about the
the
door.
structure in which we
So,
place the money. The
Listen,
money
to me, 'cause
may
you
not
can't really
amount
see it on the
to,
body cam.
there may not be
But when
actual
we did go back to the
delivery
body
of
cam,
70 billion, maybe it'll be
passengers
less,
holding
somewhere between 50
the
and 70 billion, but
drivers'
the European powers and NATO
So I think
have
what
committed
happened
that
is
Europe
he
will
snatches
fund
the rock,
2 more years
throws
of
it in
war,
his
at
mouth
roughly
so they
speaking,
can claim
$70
that he
billion
didn't do it.
plus
But it's
the
on
euros
body
a year.
So
Exactly
I think
how
what
that
it was
money
that,
will be
that
spent
caused that reaction was the fact that he
isn't clear.
snatched that rock out
But
from her hand or
it
from
will
between
be
her legs
spent
and
on,
popped it in
and
his
that's
mouth.
its European strategy. It's the US strategy, spent on war, permanent war against against Russia. Now, yes, you're right. All sorts of, how to say, so-called co-production agreements have been made. I think the 5-point groups have in fact got financial relationships with members of the Trump family and their companies, and those associated with the Trump family, and Stephen Witkoff and Jared Kushner. Everybody makes money. Yes, you're quite right at that. The ability of co-production of components outside the Ukraine to be integrated in firing units requires movement from the Polish border into Lvov and Kiev. So we go back to the point I made. You can spend vast amounts of money inside the Ukraine, diversifying your drone manufacture, removing drone factories from the targeted areas that the Russian side has hit. I'm not denigrating the capabilities of the Russian side to strike at drone manufacturing plants. They've been doing it and saying they've been doing it. Defense Ministry daily bulletin for years now. The point I'm making is a bit different. No matter what level of Russian attack has been applied, the Ukrainians, with American satellite and other intelligence, with European funding, with German and other direct assistance, German, British, and what have you. With all of that, the Russian counter is not reducing the level of damage that the Ukrainian side can inflict. And so long as they can inflict that damage, with which we began this program, the concept of permanent war from a Ukrainian firing platform is funded to the degree the US side wants and aims at. Without a Russian counter to that permanent strategy, whether the Ukrainians receive $50 or $70 billion in the coming year, and then another 50 or 70 billion. The numbers can vary. The forms of assistance can vary. But so the firing platform continues to fire. And that's the strategic problem. Remember how we began the special military operation as defined by President Putin. It had two major objectives: demilitarization, right, and denazification, right? Now, denazification is now an impossibility. It's not simply because you can't change the ideological character of the Zelensky regime or whatever successor regime would come from any form of election or cabinet reshuffling or change of the intelligence directorates, both their military and civilian intelligence directorates or the defense ministry. You can't denazify the strategy I've expressed when Germany is remilitarized, when the UK is committed to the strategy. We've said it before, you can't denazify Ukraine if you've got Nazification or renazification in Europe. That's not possible as a viable political goal. It might be a goal in some Russian thinking mind, for a pause, but it's no longer a viable war aim. Now take the demilitarization objective. That's no longer, in the present conditions of long-range drone warfare, funded whether it's 50 billion a year or 70 or more, doesn't matter. Demilitarization no longer is a viable origin unless demilitarization goes to the Polish border. And so long as the Polish border is open, the land route is open, the firing platform can fire. The fire-point deals with the Trump family or any other of the myriad of Ukrainian, European companies, Ukrainian, American companies. It's a boom business to all of them, but they don't need the rest of the Ukrainian economy to work. Now, how do you demilitarize that? How do you? Well, it must mean a level of extension of the buffer zone, as President Bush has called it. Not through Sumy region, not through Kharkov region. It must go as far west as the Polish border. Without that, you don't have a demilitarized zone. You don't have an achievement of a demilitarized demilitarization, which was the Russian side's initial objective. So, no denazification is possible. Demilitarization is now transformed. Now we are facing, let's call it, and this isn't my opinion, I'm answering the consensus of Russian views that I check with every day. I mentioned one of them, Alexarov, but there are lots of them. Some with names, some with official titles, some who talk quietly behind closed doors, some who speak publicly. But this is the problem. Let's call it a relatively new problem.
You're the one who did this. All this could have been avoided if you just got out of the car.
The point that you raised about the connection between Poland and Ukraine, that is something I would say it's so political, it's so geopolitical for Russia.
Yeah,
I don't know what is the main
drug
reason
mind,
that they
I guess,
do
the
it.
mentality.
They're trying
They
to,
call it
paraphernalia. So he can be charged.
What was the
as you
word
mentioned, they
used
have
to
do
use
something
in
about it.
class a
But
lot?
put it that aside.
Some of the drug dealer mentality and users. It's a sense of feeling invincible. Yeah, invincibility. Like they have some kind of invincibility cloak. As long as they don't acknowledge it or play stupid. No, didn't see it. Right, so this is a classic situation where clearly everyone saw him eat the drugs, and then there were some on her ass. It's in the car too. And then to them just play totally stupid. So you're telling me I ate drugs? And the cop goes, yeah. And he's telling him step by step what just happened. And that it's all on camera, Michael. Unbelievable. Right, so I mean, without the body camera and stuff like that, and the cops aren't going to push that kind of thing unless they actually saw it, right? I mean, they don't set people up and pretend like they saw someone eating drugs or stuck to someone's ass just to stick it to the poor people or the criminals or whatever, just trying to show their control and force. Yeah, I mean, they don't have to really worry about that because everybody can see it. Yeah, and I mean, usually in those situations, even without the body camera, it seems the judge will side with, oftentimes, the officers, 9 times out of 10, but there are those times where they might let it go. We'll just pretend. Maybe you thought you saw it. And I mean, it's not a coincidence that those kind of ones are always different high-profile ones, And it's not always that they were paid off, is it? No, they just don't want the heat from those kind of loops and groups. They almost kind of want to befriend them in a way, too, to help with other maybe investigations. You have all different scenarios throughout law enforcement, investigative, even households, people that aren't even occupied within any of those forces that are in situations that are aware who, yeah, it's not easy, is it? When you're around sickos and criminals and people lost in delusional beliefs and lies and bulldogging for some really horrible stuff. And they think it's just Converse shoes and Gucci bags and you're just a retard pothead. And they don't see that the retard pothead is actually a mass of people all over the world who have been watching and listening very closely to a lot of these situations and case studies. So they don't see that, and they don't see beyond the meatballs and Converse shoes and Gucci bags that some of the people sew in the bags, and not even them oftentimes, usually the ones who are employing the ones sewing the bags and making the meatballs and giving them the materials and supplies, whether it be for knockoff products or drugs or information. Go spread some pamphlets, fundraising, whatever it is. Different areas, people are going to want to promote or buy different things depending on what sparks their interest. And they have people going around doing that as well, coast to coast, marketing. They really do believe, though. They really do. Oh, it's sad. So this went on for years. Remember back with the History Channel, directly connected to some of those traveling bands trying to find out who killed Kennedy and trafficking heroin, making crop circles and stuff like that. Yeah, those kind of people. Yeah, it's always different. Every year there's a new round of people just ready to use their journalizing skills and, really, really put forth a good effort to do a good job, because they want to move up the chain, right? They want to get promoted. They want to show they got what it takes. Right, so remember a lot of the shows that went around, and there's specific ones that get brought up in class. Some were aired on live TV, cable TV. Not live TV, cable TV. Well, it was live to somebody. Being viewed for the first time. Well, someone made it. Other people have watched it and edited it. This is not being viewed for the first time. I beg your pardon. I know, it is. For you, it is. Yeah, it's real. It's real, Virginia. It's okay. Let's watch. Shh. Right, so they would have the ghost hunters go in. Remember, the dad had called the ghost hunters, and he was just beside himself. He knew the ghosts weren't real and that the mother was fucked up in the head, but he didn't want to upset the wife. The children were scared to sleep in their rooms. They saw a handprint on the window. What'd you hear? What'd you see? Oh my God, it must be people from the dead coming here to haunt you, and they're gonna make you sick unless we make this house clear. So then they would go around. This was real, okay? Kids wouldn't sleep in their room. The mom is fucked up, medicated. It's a total Cameron's Closet type of situation. And as you can see, people in different classes use those kind of beliefs and symptoms to get funding or help somebody do an exorcism, get money to do an exorcism. Then you have other people who are investigating that bullshit. Sometimes they join forces or kill each other. It's beautiful. It's absolutely match made in heaven, just like the medications when they come together, like the ones you're not supposed to mix. Oh, it's been fun, hasn't it? Poltergeist. Bunch of fucking window washing freaks. Lord is good. Lord is good. I love these classes. It's medicinal. It's actually medicinal for us. We love it. Oh man, it's like playing a game or doing a crossword puzzle for some people. You know, we've been thinking of popping on the Xbox. I want to play some games. I want to play Resident Evil. I want to play Halo. I want to get kudos on the racetrack. Just... what happened? Is there a new Mortal Kombat coming out? They should do a new Mortal Kombat and Dungeons and Dragons, but don't let them ruin it with the fucking stupid, dumb, fucking dumb storyline, anime, fucking bullshit. God damn it. Stupid. Anime, Annabelle, Anthrax, Antenna. Anthro. Anticlimax. Anti-establishmentarianism. Oh, fuck you. Antihistamine. Anal retentive. Androgynous. Didn't see that coming, did you? You were expecting an N and I threw in a D. Androgynous is a cool word. You want to make that the word of the day?
Aside, John, in my opinion, what's going on, the big picture of what's going on, if we assume, let's assume that Ukraine is using these drones to attack these ships inside Russia, some, refineries in Russia.
Maine's rural hospitals
is that going to change the grand strategy of Russia? In my opinion, denazification and demilitarization is happening, or has been happening. When you lose 2.5 million soldiers in a war, what does that mean? It means demilitarization. Denazification, I think Russia is getting to the point with the new blockade on Ukrainian ports in Odessa, Nikolaev, and all those little ports in the Black Sea. They literally achieving that, in my opinion, as time goes by. Because when you have an isolated, land called the western part of Ukraine, which the final point would be their connection with the Polish border. And if Russia does something in that area, that would be the end for Ukraine. Or how do you see that? A combination of the blockade in the Black Sea together with the border, the Ukrainian and Polish border.
Well, I think you said rather a lot, so let me take the pieces apart, if I might. In the first place, yes, a combination of isolation of all sea routes and all land routes reduces the Ukraine to a relatively more isolated firing platform. And you can, from a Russian point of view, demilitarize what remains. Yes. Second, if the US and European strategy is permanent war against Europe, and if those countries consider the targets of their permanent war include war against Russian capital, war against Russian shipping, war against Russian industry, war against Russian internet systems, all of that, if that's part of their war, then Russia has, according to President Putin's tit-for-tat or mirror strategy, failed to adopt tit-for-tat for that. In other words, and I've said it before, and I'm not saying it is my opinion, there is lots of support for this, including former President Medvedev. Russia has to attack U.S. capital in the same fashion as the U.S. is attacking Russian capital. There are lots of vulnerabilities right now. The Russian, there's no discussion, however, of this counter strategy against U.S. capital, European capital, the capital that is mobilized against Russia for this permanent war, were the vulnerabilities of those sources of capital, the U.S. stock markets, the stock market bubbles that recently collapsed in South Korea, indicate how vulnerable U.S. stock markets, in particular those corporations and those oligarchs. Musk is obviously one, Peter Thiel and the Palantir Group is another. These are all participants in direct mobilization of their capital against Russia. If Russia were to exercise counter-capital strategy, which it's capable of but doesn't discuss, then one would reach a level of, let's call it strategic deterrence, strategic parity, which has a better chance of deterring the war, that's a profit maker for these US and European military-industrial complexes. Now, why doesn't that happen in Russia? The answer is simple enough. It's politically the role of the economic base, the oligarch base in Russia. They do not want President Putin to escalate to counterattacking US capital. It's an irony, perhaps, if you look at the way in which Kirill Dmitriev, President Putin's special negotiator with US capital, with Witkoff and Kushner in particular, and the Trump family, Kirill Dmitriev recites regularly how the European capital system is falling down. He never, ever recites anything comparable about the US capital system. He does not attack Musk and the Starlink system. There's plenty of discussion in the Russian military bloggers raising the question, why does Russia not attack Musk and the Starlink system on which Ukrainian military communications depend? We could go on. It's not my job here to spell out what sorts of operational and tactical targeting there should be. That's not my job. My job's a reporter. But you ask a question, what can happen if the Ukraine is reduced to a firing platform funded at $50 billion to $70 billion a year to continue firing at Russia? It's not the only one. Obviously, there's remilitarization in Poland. There's remilitarization, including nuclear weapons in Finland. We can go on around up the north towards the North Pole. We can go down south through the Caucasus, the Caspian Sea, to the Iran front. All of these things are part of a U.S. war. And the U.S. war is run by people who are extremely vulnerable to the price of oil, to the domestic inflation, and to the cost of election financing, which President Trump aims to ensure first the Preservation of Republican Congress in November, and then a stable succession for either member of his family or Vice President Vance or Secretary of State Rubio in 2028. The vulnerability of the US side and the Trump administration, these are vulnerabilities that Russia hasn't threatened, even to the degree that Iran is threatening. Now, I raised this issue, this vulnerability of the US capital markets, the US election financing system, in pointing out the mystery man that you tagged today's broadcast with, Nima. That's a man called Michael Needham. He appears in the background, not identified, in the background of the Oval Office meeting with Zelensky and the Ukrainian delegation meeting President Trump last week. Now, if you don't mind, I'll just spell out who Needham is and why he's important as a long-winded way of answering your question. Michael Needham, has no military experience. He has no intelligence background. He has no diplomatic background. He has no advanced degree in any foreign language. He has no foreign experience whatsoever. And yet, he's been appointed in recent weeks to be the Deputy National Security Advisor. And there you can see the red ring around the picture of Needham standing next to General Daniel Kaine, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, standing behind the row of ministers, Vice President Vance, Secretary of State Rubio, I believe Scott Bessent, the U.S. Treasury Secretary, and Trump's Chief of Staff, Susan Wiles, in the foreground on the right. And I've put up a picture of Michael Needham in the top in the cartoon. Needham's Jewish, his mother's Jewish. He is a very close supporter of Israel. He's been employed by a man called Oren Cass in a think tank called American Compass, which supports Israel's genocide in Gaza and all the other expansionist policies that Israel represents. Needham is, however, the de facto national security advisor in the White House. Why? Because Marco Rubio is the Secretary of State and the national security advisor at the same time. That combination is rare in U.S. White House structure. It's very rare. And regrettably, in the military expertise that podcasts have in the United States, very few people seem to understand how a White House works. Now, only twice in the history of the White House, of the National Security Advisor, has there been one man occupying both the job of Secretary of State and National Security Advisor. There's Needham. Only twice when U.S. has been at war. The last time was 1973 to 75, when Henry Kissinger was both Secretary of State and National Security Advisor, and his deputy, in other words, the Needham person, was Brent Scowcroft. Brent Scowcroft, now dead, was a Lieutenant General of the United States Air Force. He trained as a fighter pilot. He had a PhD from Columbia. He had foreign military intelligence posting in Yugoslavia. He had unique and extensive military intelligence, diplomatic and academic expertise in foreign countries. He could coordinate the role of the National Security Council to prepare a president for his military war-making, peacemaking operations. That's then. What we have now is unique. Why unique? Because Needham doesn't have any of that. I'm not saying he should. I'm simply saying what this means is this. You have an individual like that whose real job is to present all war, diplomatic, strategic options to President Trump in the only way Needham is expert. That's domestic policy priorities to keep money flowing into Trump's election coffers, to handle the succession, and to control and enhance the MAGA constituency vote and the Republican Party constituency vote for the midterms and the coming presidential election. In other words, what has happened inside the Trump White House, uniquely, never before, is that domestic priorities run foreign policy priorities. And the National Security Council is no longer in a position to either coordinate, direct, or even influence the military options. They are, I'd say, subordinate to the domestic priorities. And you can see it in Trump's behavior. You've seen it in the questions you asked. You see it in Trump's tweets, partly controlled by Needham, partly controlled by Stephen Miller, upstairs from Needham's office in the White House. What is Trump doing? He's basically saying, and I'm just reaching for his latest tweets, you can see them. On the one hand, USA is locked and loaded and ready to go against the Islamic Republic of Iran, and he's threatening massive new military attacks. You began our program with that. On the other hand, he's saying, I've been persuaded not to do this. And I've been persuaded by Iran, I've been persuaded by my Arab allies, and I've been persuaded by Israel. He says that in a tweet on August the 2nd. On August the 3rd, he says Iranian leadership is unbelievably duplicitous. I won't read it all. The point I'm trying to make is this is the stuff of a domestic pitch at votes and money, which are the priorities of the Trump administration. They indicate how vulnerable the Trump administration is to the two things that Trump really cares about, because voters care about: inflation and battle casualties. We've said it before, we've said it again. Incumbent presidents can't survive rising perception among US voters of inflationary threat and death threat from war. They cannot. Now let's look at President Trump's polls as Needham looks at them, as Miller looks at them. Let's look at the fact that Trump's approval rating keeps getting worse. That is to say, nothing he can do, not on the Ukrainian battlefield, not on the Iranian battlefield, not anywhere, does US voter approval improve. He's become no longer a peacemaker. That doesn't persuade any US votes. His current job approval on inflation is getting worse by 1 percentage point a week. Now, the current level of disapproval among US voters on Trump's job on inflation, oil price, Strait of Hormuz, 39 percentage points of disapproval. Almost 70% of Americans consider Trump's behavior raises inflation risk. Approval of or disapproval of his handling of Russia and Ukraine, of his approval of his handling of the Iran war, all get worse by about 1 percentage point a week. What that means, what it tells Needham, what it tells White House election campaign technologists right now, what it tells them is the domestic priority comes first. So we'll have permanent war in Europe, and we'll get the Europeans to pay for it.
No, it wasn't.
We'll have permanent war against Iran, and we will. We have a problem of how to pay for it, and we will have stop go big threats,
from the decree to the reversal,
military operations
side
for
by side.
demonstrative, performative effect to show how strong we are, but we don't engage in the level of war that would cause casualties and more increase in oil price. If you see that that's the way the Trump administration and the Trump White House works, and I use Needham as an example, unprecedented historical example of that way of thinking, then let's go back to your question. That administration is highly vulnerable to counterattack at exactly what they're trying to protect. Inflation, stock market value, market capitalization of the AI and Musk type, Thiel type boom in the combination of AI and military expenditures, which Trump is using to raise his, as it were, success as a president, and you can see all the rest. I mean, leaving aside the way he decorates himself for doing this, I'm saying this is a serious vulnerability of the capital base underlying the Trump White House, as you have fellows like Needham trying to use that base and use Trump to manage their two permanent walls. Okay? Now, if that's the vulnerability, then the only way forward for Russia is first to isolate Ukraine and turn off the lights. If you see lights burning in Kiev and Lvov, then they're not doing enough. Second, the Russian side must develop counter-capital attack, counter-capital strategy. But why won't President Putin do that? The answer is his base, the Russian oligarch base, abhors a war against U.S. capital. It has long wanted to join that U.S. capital in what it called globalization, offshoreization. So there's a reason why President Putin doesn't go in that direction. There are reasons why his critics, including ex-President Medvedev, recently called for a new active approach. That's this. What I'm saying is this. What I'm saying is Needham is unique, but he's vulnerable. Attack his vulnerabilities. They attack Putin's vulnerabilities every day. We began with an attack on a Turkish vessel bringing in vegetables. Why vegetables and fruit? To raise the price of vegetables and fruit during the summer season, right? Why attack the wild berries in Chekhov the 24 hours ago? That attacks the middle class urbanite and the young, who get all of their products, as we do in the United States and the rest of the world, through Amazon. This is war at the level of capital. If you don't want to fight that war, if President Putin can't or won't, there'll be a strategic argument which will become politically sensitive when Russia goes to the polls September 18th.
People at their word, if you just look for the signs, especially
John, it seems to me that Russia wants to be laser focused on Ukraine, and that's why they don't want to expand the war. If you expand the war, you mentioned, attack on the United States, U.S. capital, and how is that going to help Russia and Russia's position in the war in Ukraine? I don't see that happening. Why do they need to do that? And they can hit the targets in Europe, they can hit the targets in the region, or those factors